Hey friends, welcome back. It's now 2 days until the Bitcoin halving, as I'm sure many of y'all know. And the market has just pulled back significantly in the last several days. So this former professional stock trader in me, who started buying Bitcoin in 2013, whatever, I'm seeing this as an especially opportune moment to get involved in the markets. And today I wanted to talk more about why, and I wanted us to look at the markets to kind of see where these price levels are and use a little bit more technical analysis to get a sense of when we might want to get into the markets, like specific moments in time, and how to take a look at the graphs to get a sense of when the momentum is present and when the momentum is less present, because that also helps us figure out when we want to execute a specific trade. So, if we don't know one another, I'm Rachel. I'm the founder of Seeds, which is a crypto mutual aid project which has helped people in 30 countries and counting with a focus on women. And I do these talks because I want to see more people who are artists, who are working in social good, people with a lot of feminine energy, regardless of your gender. I want y'all to receive more resourcing from these cryptocurrency market cycles, because if you have more resourcing, you're going to be able to do more of what you're already doing, which is making the world a better place. So I'm trying to share this information with folks like you. And you can also use Seeds if you need it. Seeds is working to transcend the dumb zero sum nonprofit for profit binary. When you help someone in need through Seeds, you get Seeds cryptocurrency. And thanks, because we want people to build wealth through giving. And when you need to, you can redeem a seed to ask for help and receive that as a gift, with no strings attached. So that's available to you too. We also have a course coming up in 3 days. It closes. So I'll share more about that, and the link for that is in the description if that's of interest to you. And the course supports us so that 100% of the value of gifts that come through Seeds can go to people in need. So it's meant to be like a win-win-win. All right, let's take a look at the Bitcoin halving countdown to start. We'll go here. So this has jumped around a bit in terms of the dates, because the halving is going to happen specifically when a certain block is mined on the Bitcoin blockchain. This is when it's currently expected to happen at 5:12 p.m. Pacific on April 19th. So that's Friday, 2 days away from when I'm recording this. And that's pretty soon, right? So this might fluctuate a little bit more so, but at this point, we'll see. I mean, it's looking like it's going to happen on the 19th. At previous times, it had predicted that it might be April 20th and even April 18th. So we'll see. And then test, test, test. Sorry, y'all. Thanks for letting me know. I just saw in the chat that I'm muted. Okay, so I'll hop back in. It looks like the sound is good. Let me know if it's still off. Sorry about that. I'm so sorry. Okay, so um, what was I talking about? I was talking about the Bitcoin halving history a little bit. So when we're looking at this, the next halving is April 19th, which is 2 days away. And then, yeah, I think I lost the sound when I hopped into this Bitcoin halving dates history. So I think we're good now. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, yeah. So I just wanted to talk more about like what the halving itself meant, because that's not always clear to a lot of folks. It's not like an intuitive thing necessarily. Literally, what it means is that when it happens, the block reward that is generated by the Bitcoin ecosystem with every Bitcoin, with every block on the blockchain that is mined, that block reward is cut in half with every halving. So if we're looking at the data here, we can see that in the first halving cycle, the halving itself happened November 28th of 2012, and the block reward went from 50 to 25 Bitcoin. And then in July of 2016, it went from 25 to 12.5 Bitcoin, and so on. So yeah, now with the fourth halving coming up on April 19th, we're looking at the reward going from 6.25 Bitcoin per block mined to 3.125 Bitcoin. So the reason that's significant is that Bitcoin is meant to be like effectively deflationary by design. So that's just meant that from the outset, the intention surrounding like the design of Bitcoin dictated that only 21 million Bitcoin will ever exist in total. And the idea there is in part because of these halving events, the price would be driven up because there was this limited supply. And that's in contrast to fiat currency like the US dollar, which governments, the US government specifically, are like just prints kind of willy nilly. I mean, when they're printing the dollar, they're trying to do so in a way that they're trying to moderate inflation to some extent, but that's the reason the dollar is continually eroding in value and always will be, because more of it can just be printed at any time. So Bitcoin was trying to counteract that with this design intention. And these halving events have been super significant because they're like this kind of line in the sand, and they've acted as this market catalyst, not only for Bitcoin, but for all cryptocurrencies in the past. So looking at this price data is kind of fun. And also, I just wanted to underline, so we can see here if we're looking at the lowest price and the highest price in these cycles. Okay, so we know that the first halving was November 28th, 2012. The price at the date of the halving, we can see here, was $12.40. And that was also the lowest price that, according to this, Bitcoin hit during that halving cycle. And then the highest price, according to this, was $1,170 about 12 months later. So that we can see that holds up more or less in each of these halving cycles. The lowest price is, with the exception of the second halving, it was right around the lowest price for that cycle when the halving happened. So that's why I'm really trying to kind of shout this from the rooftops now, so that, like, good giving people are benefiting, because, it stands to reason that with the halving 2 days away now, and also because we just had this big, I shouldn't say it wasn't really that big. We just had a market pullback. Prices have pulled back recently, and I'll show you more so in the graphs here in a little bit. So when that happens prior to a halving, I mean, history tells us that those have been some of the best opportunities to buy. So I want y'all to be ready and be aware and have that information so you can use it like as you will. The one exception here is the second halving cycle, because we can see that, so the second halving was July 9th of 2016. The price at the time of the halving was $680 a coin. But then we see that the lowest price was actually the following month in August of 2016. It dropped to $535 a coin. So this is a bit of an anomaly because there were other factors going on in the sector. Also in July of 2016, Ethereum went through this issue, with something called the DAO being hacked. And they had to undergo what's called a hard fork to address like issues in this faulty contract, where I think it was like $60 million worth of ether was drained. And so the community voted to make this change, to go forward with this hard fork. If you've ever heard of Ethereum Classic, this is when Ethereum Classic was formed, because the hard fork meant that there were two forks in the code in the blockchain. And the new fork became the Ethereum that we use today, or the version of it that existed at that time, because we've had subsequent hard forks. The original fork is what is now known as Ethereum Classic. So they chose not to address this particular issue because it wasn't it wasn't about sort of like a flaw in Ethereum's like root design. You can read more about that if you're interested in like specifically why it happened and the technical specifics and so forth. But yeah, I'm just sharing that because there were other circumstances in the second halving cycle that influenced the price. And then once Ethereum addressed those issues, things really started going, like heading into early 2017. And that cycle, it was all about ICOs, initial coin offerings, where people were building projects on top of Ethereum. They, like, Ethereum regained people's trust. And that was, I would say, the single biggest driving factor for crazy price increases in the second Bitcoin halving cycle that was happening in Ethereum. So yeah, that's why I would say that price is lower that time around. I don't think, I mean, based on what I know right now at least, I don't see other extenuating circumstances that are going to give us a similar sort of happenstance this time around. I'm really feeling like okay, let's take a look at the graphs. There's the countdown again. It's just giving me this sense that because things have pulled back now ish in the last several days anyway, this might be the opportunity, that ends up being the best opportunity. We're getting this cycle. I mean, again, past performance doesn't indicate future results. It certainly doesn't guarantee future results. But y'all, like, pullbacks around the time of a halving have been historically ultimately very profitable for people. So I wanted us to take a look at this price. This is the Bitcoin USD graph. And I'm going to go up here to, we'll look at the 6-hour time interval so we can see things, you know, heading out with like more of a bird's eye view. Actually, we'll look at the day graph, and I'll zoom out. So if we're checking this out longer term, and to stress again, obviously we're talking about the Bitcoin halving, so like looking at the Bitcoin price is relevant. But a big part of the reason the Bitcoin halving matters so much is because Bitcoin continues to have such an influence over the cryptocurrency sector as a whole in its entirety. And I don't think at this point that that is right. Like, I think, you know, maybe there should be more discernment regarding the differences in various cryptocurrency projects. But this is the way it still is. So we can use this information to our advantage as cryptocurrency traders. So being aware of what's going on in Bitcoin is sort of a barometer for what's going on in the cryptocurrency sector as a whole. So when I'm checking stuff out and looking at the markets, I'll look at what Bitcoin's doing first, typically. So yeah, if we're looking at this sort of longer term graph, around March 14th, March 13th, this right here is the current all-time high. This is the highest price that Bitcoin has ever reached. You may have heard me say this already, but something else that's really significant, this particular halving cycle that we're about to start with the halving on April 19th, is the fact that heading into this cycle, Bitcoin has already broken all-time highs 4 times in 2024 alone. And let's look at the halving dates history again real quick. So that's a big deal because it's never happened before. Excuse me. Before it broke highs in early 2024, the previous all-time high was hit in, I think it was November of 2021. And we've blown past that. So the reason for that, the large reason, has to do with the fact that Bitcoin exchange traded funds, ETFs, which are like Bitcoin stocks, were approved in the United States in January of this year. And the reason for that is that, like people that are comfortable trading the stock market but maybe weren't comfortable trading cryptocurrency now have something of a form of Bitcoin that they can get into in a way that they're more familiar with. And so that means, there's this likelihood that more and more people are going to be coming into the sector and buying up Bitcoin or a form of Bitcoin with this Bitcoin ETF, which then sends prices up further. Yeah, so it's a big deal. Let's see. So let's go back and look at the graphs. So if we're looking at these prices, um, after that moment where it made new all-time highs in mid-March, we saw this pullback. According to this graph, it looks like it came down to about 60. And then we had a retracement up to about not quite 72 at the end of March. Another pullback to about 65. And then it's been bouncing back and forth a bit between this like it got up to, it looks like slightly higher high in a relative sense at around 72.5. And then it pulled back down to where we are now. So this looks really good to me. Um, and I'll explain why. I mean, I don't trade Bitcoin anymore. Very, very rarely trade it anyway, because I think other cryptocurrencies are more interesting and more aligned with my values. And also, cheaper cryptocurrencies have been way more profitable in every cryptocurrency halving cycle, every Bitcoin halving cycle so far. But if I were trading Bitcoin, I'm looking at this, I would see like, okay, back in after it came off of the all-time highs it set in mid-March, around March 19th or so, it looks like, it came back down and got close to 60. We can see that it couldn't get back up and break all-time highs again. So in a relative sense, something I'm going to keep in mind when I'm looking at this is that when something is making lower highs, um, that can mean that it's trending downward. If it's bouncing back and forth, but it can't quite get up to break the previous high that it had set, that can be a sign that things are heading down. But we want to see lower highs as well as lower lows. And this isn't making lower lows. It looks like it's consolidating a bit in that this looks slightly higher. This low, this relative low that we're at right about right now, looks like to me like it's slightly higher than what was hit back around March 19th or so. So even though this is a lower high, I'm not, given this and everything else that's going on, I'm not concerned about this coming down a bunch or anything. Maybe it will drop further in price and there'll be an even better opportunity to buy. But I mean, with the halving being 2 days off, I'm not confident that that's going to be the case. So this just seems really awesome because it looks like at this very moment, that we're speaking now, it came back down to very close to the sort of relative low that it made after making these all-time highs. So if I'm trading Bitcoin, I probably want to load up, truthfully, like as much as possible right around this price because it just looks good. And I don't know when we're going to get to see an opportunity to buy at these prices again. Um, so it looks to me like it's a pretty big deal. It would be kind of nice. I mean, if we're thinking about like ideal trading circumstances, I would say that this is like fairly close to an ideal moment in the sense that this is something that happens every 4 years. Bitcoin halving happens at roughly every 4 years. But beyond that, with stuff going on with ETFs, things already being so bullish because Bitcoin has broken all-time highs 4 times already this year. These this looks really excellent to me. It looks stronger than I've seen it ever, since I started buying Bitcoin in 2013. And then on top of that, we're in this pullback moment right now where it's like literally hitting pretty close to the lows that it established after coming off of its all-time highs in mid-March. If I wanted it to be sort of like a perfect storm of circumstances, one thing that is quote unquote missing is that I'd want to see something that indicates that like the momentum is about to turn. When we're looking at graphs and using technical analysis to get a sense of specific prices, moments where we want to do something, consolidation can be a good sign that momentum is building. So as I kind of already touched on, this looks like a slight sign of consolidation to me because it is making slightly higher lows and slightly lower highs. So the range is tightening a bit. And that just means that it's kind of like a coil or something. Like, if you're pushing a coil down, whatever, it's going to spring back up. And that typically is how markets move as those ranges tighten. And whenever the momentum builds and then it decides to go in one direction or another, it's typically going to go in the direction that it was already trending overall. So in this case, that's up. So y'all, I'm just trying to say, like, I'm not I'm definitely an advocate for being careful not to overtrade. I'm not a person who overtrades at all. And this looks really awesome to me, and it looks like something that I want to trade as much as I can. It looks really great. So if you're interested in getting involved in Bitcoin, I mean, as ever, don't just listen to me. Only do what resonates with your intuition and your understanding. But these circumstances look pretty sick. Um, we'll see. Again, like maybe it will drop a little bit further. This isn't like a strong sign that momentum is building because it's not, the consolidation isn't super tight or anything. That's not what I'm seeing on this graph. But given that the halving is 2 days away, and it's been a catalyst in the past, that's a good sign that we're going to start seeing that momentum heading upward, moving into the future. All right, let me take a look at the chat real quick, see what folks are saying. Cody's like, very healthy for Bitcoin to be pulling back just a little. Totally. Yeah, I agree. Stefan says, someone in numerology said more downside for May. I'm not very familiar with how numerology works, although that's interesting because I am very interested in astrology and how that intersects with the markets. And as many of y'all know, the Jupiter Uranus conjunction in Taurus is on the 20th. And I think it's fascinating that that's like almost simultaneous with the Bitcoin halving. I can say, speaking from a market perspective, that something that probably is driving prices down right now too is just like regulatory uncertainty in the US, which continues to be an issue. Uniswap, a lawsuit was filed against Uniswap recently by the SEC in the US. And so there's that. And then like there was this hope that there would be an Ether ETF, exchange traded fund, filed in the US in May. It looks like the SEC is going to battle that out as well. So that's going to prolong things. But then at the same time, the London Stock Exchange is approving a Bitcoin and an Ether ETN. I believe it's already approved, actually. I think it's launching on May 28th. So, like other places where people are more evolved in they're thinking about this. Things are moving in that regard in terms of creating these products that exist on the mainstream markets. Yeah, so that could mean that things in May aren't as bullish as we might have initially hoped, especially if an Ethereum ETF had been introduced. But yeah, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But other than that, I don't, from what I know right now, and again, like you always want to have, enough humility to recognize that things can change and there can be news events that you're not anticipating that can really change what's going on. So you always want to be open to bringing in more information and adjusting your trading positions based on what you learned. If you don't do that, you can be in for a bad time. But yeah, based on what I know right now, for what it's worth, I don't see other indicators that would mean that it would go down in May for any reason that I can see, for what that's worth. Oh, looks like, okay, Waters Above is the name of this numerology person. Interesting. I mean, y'all, like, the thing about astrologers and numerologists who are talking about crypto now, and that's why I've started to try to talk a little bit about astrology with my own limited, I'm like a hobbyist at best, is that those folks probably aren't trading cryptocurrency. I haven't seen a single astrologer, but again, like I'm not aware of what's going on in numerology. Um, I haven't seen anyone else who has sort of a knowledge of how markets work and has experience trading. So yeah, as always, like be aware of that when you're looking at predictions that people are making. Um, Janfan says, hey, Rachel, when you have a moment, I sent you an email. Not sure if you check it, but if you can, that would be awesome. Sure, I will. I will definitely check that email. Hi, Brian. Cody says XRP is coming up as well. Yeah, that's, I mean, a thing, that idea with like the Bitcoin halving being significant because Bitcoin still has this outside influence on the sector as a whole. we're probably going to see a lot of cryptocurrencies coming up. Probably the vast majority of cryptocurrencies will be coming up with this. And you can play that. As far as XRP goes, I'll share that I've never personally been a fan of XRP. I did trade it when I thought it looked like they were going to win the lawsuit against the SEC, because the SEC coming after them really suppressed the price. And I'm not a lawyer, but I thought, I mean, it just looked like the SEC was doing this thing they've been doing a lot where they're, what's the word again? Legislating through enforcement. And so I bought a bunch of XRP when the price was down before the results of that lawsuit were determined. And then when they won, it did go up a bunch in price. So I did make that trade. And, you know, like, you can do whatever you want. For me, I'm not above making a trade because I think it's going to be profitable, certainly, because then you can take that money and put it into other things that you're more excited about. But like, in terms of values and like longer term trades and stuff, XRP is never something I've been interested in, because they were always like the corporate cryptocurrency, and their strategy was always about like going to corporations and onboarding corporations. And I mean, that's okay. These rich projects that can fight these lawsuits, you know, have created value in the sector. With the way the world is now, where like you still have to pay lawyers for stuff, and you know, so many other projects wouldn't have been able to afford to do what XRP did. So I mean, that's cool. But yeah, XRP is never a cryptocurrency that I personally resonated with, just to share that. And you, as ever, I would only suggest that you make trades, you know, that resonate with you, with cryptocurrencies that resonate with you, unless you just think it's going to be profitable for a shorter term trade or something, and you want to do what I did, like with that XRP situation in the past. The seer says hello. Hi. Cody says beginners should not be messing with leverage trading though, right? I'm assuming you mean like margin trading. In which case, yeah, you can, if you're able to margin trade, centralized platforms will offer this sometimes. Kraken offers this, I know. Yeah, that's where like you would only have $1,000 or something that you can put up, but they'll let you leverage that trade so that you're making a $5,000 trade or something. Yeah, I wouldn't encourage new traders to margin trade, um, because it comes back to that idea that like you never want to invest more money than you'd be totally okay to lose, especially in the very early stages. Because if that goes against you, you can be fucked, and you don't want to be in that position. Um, I've margin traded a few times. I even did that on Gemini, which is the platform we're looking at here, when it wasn't allowed. I just figured out that I could like move ACH. I could make ACH transfers to this platform, and then they would cover it. Like, this is okay. This is also because I don't like Gemini, so I wouldn't encourage you to do this either. And I don't even know if this was ethically okay for me to do this, really. But I saw that they permitted it, so I did it. So like in March of 2020, I realized that I could. I thought it was about to go. I thought the market was about to go. So I moved in some money, but I didn't have enough money to cover the entirety of what they were letting me trade. And so I bought, it was like many tens of thousands of dollars worth of ether, and it did go. And then later on, they wanted me to cover, you know, what I'd put in, um, which hadn't cleared, and so they just sold off my ether to cover that. So it was fine. That was like a form of margin trading, even though margin trading wasn't allowed on their platform. But if it had gone against me, like that would have been very bad. So yeah, don't mess around with stuff like that unless you have enough experience to feel comfortable with it, and unless you're really confident. But it was really satisfying because I felt like I kind of like exploited this design on this kind of evil corporate platform, and managed to benefit from it. Um, uh, Tintap says sell in May and go away is a popular saying. I haven't heard that saying, but I wouldn't. I mean, again, do what's right for you, but I we're looking at the historic graphs, right? Unless you're actively trading, unless you're somebody that's able to check the markets at least several times a week and and you're making more active trading decisions in that way. You know, the data from the past shows us that all-time highs were reached 12 to 18 months, with the exception of the most recent all-time highs, which were like 4 years later. Not quite 4 years later. All-time highs were reached 12 to 18-ish months later. So if you're not an active trader, and even if you are, I think it's a good idea to keep this in mind so that you're thinking about things in terms of that, right? Like, I don't see indicators that things are going to go up a bunch in May. If anything, it looks like things may be slower because of these problems surrounding the ETFs in the States. But then again, the London Stock Exchange introduction of that ETN could drive things up. But it's a little bit of a mixed bag. So yeah, for what it's worth, I don't see a sign that selling in May looks like a clear-cut thing that one should do. Russell says, do you trade Bitcoin only? No, I talked about this at the beginning of this session. I haven't traded Bitcoin really at all in many years because there are other cryptocurrencies that I think are more interesting. And also the cheaper cryptocurrencies have been more profitable in past market cycles. Cody asked that too. Yeah, Cody says, yes, do you invest in other altcoins? Yeah, I don't even like the term altcoin though. And I haven't liked it for many years because it like implies that it's just Bitcoin and then everything else is an alternative. And I don't think of things in that way. I think that like with the introduction of Ethereum in 2015, for example, I've said this a bunch before, but like, so Bitcoin existed and then Vitalik Buterin, who's the most visible Ethereum co-founder, was a software engineer. And he was writing for Bitcoin magazine, as I understand. And he was like, Bitcoin is really interesting, but wouldn't it be cool if we had a crypto network that allowed software engineers to build on top of that network with relative ease? And so Ethereum was created to fill that need. And so as a result, a bunch of projects have been built on top of Ethereum. There have been what people have called Ethereum killers who have come on the scene since with projects that were trying to build, like a faster, better Ethereum. And nobody's managed to do that really since. Solana made a case for it, but Solana has issues with throughput. So the way I think about it is more like there was Bitcoin and then Ethereum introduced sort of an evolution in the technology. And yeah, so I mean, I don't like the term altcoin. I think people used it more in like 2014 or something, and it made more sense, I think, back then because there were only like 3 cryptocurrencies. But yeah, I'm mostly trading not Bitcoin. I'm almost entirely trading not Bitcoin these days. Um, Jen says, what about geopolitical and macro factors like war, inflation, etc.? Doesn't that worry you? In what specific sense, Jen's? Like, do you mean, if you're talking about like current wars that are happening, we're not seeing that interact with the cryptocurrency markets, which is a whole other conversation we could have. If we're talking about inflation generally, I touched on this at the beginning of this live too, but Bitcoin, part of the reason the halving is baked into Bitcoin's design has to do with this idea of Bitcoin being effectively deflationary and that there are only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin in total. So it's meant to kind of counteract inflationary fiat currencies like the US dollar or the euro or the GBP or whatever currency we're talking about. So if anything, I would say inflation generally can make people more attracted to Bitcoin, especially sort of more like mainstream investors, because there's this idea that Bitcoin could be like the new gold because there's a finite amount, and because therefore, that drives demand because there's this limited supply. If you have a more specific geopolitical or macro factor you want to cite, Jens, let me know. Broadly, I'd say that's what's going on. COVID impacted prices in March of 2020, but that rebounded very quickly as soon as it was clear that governments were making decisions to funnel money to people to help them out economically during that time. Tintop says Hong Kong got BTC and Ether ETF as well. Too bad their economy is too wrecked right now to affect the charts in a positive way. I didn't know that they had one. That's cool. That is good to know. Russell says, are you a day scalp or swing trader? I've been all of those things. I when I'm approaching crypto now, I mean, I'm checking the markets every day. Um, but like I said earlier, I don't overtrade. I think that's one of the bigger mistakes that I think newer traders tend to make. And so I'm really trying to look for like opportunities that are either in cryptocurrencies that are interesting to me for the longer term. Ether is sort of the most obvious example of that, and obviously seeds as well. And then I'll make shorter term trades if it looks like, for example, something I know that a cryptocurrency is about to become available on a centralized exchange for the first time. Because typically when that happens, the price will shoot up. So I might play that. Or, I know there's a news event and there's a new technology that's going to be introduced, and maybe they haven't said that they're going to introduce a cryptocurrency yet, but it looks like they probably will. Then I might play something like that. And if I'm playing something shorter term, then I'll take profits, and I'll be looking for those levels in a more granular way, in a shorter term way. So I'm kind of doing all of those things, but yeah, I'm picking and choosing my trades pretty carefully, and yeah, I just don't overtrade. I tend to just get in if I'm really interested in and think it's a good time to do that. For example, I think it was 3 days ago now, I loaded up on more Ether because the price had just dropped. It dropped below 3,000. It's still kind of banging around down there, so it's not showing that it's going to reverse just yet. But that was I hadn't made a trade like that in a bit, because it just looked to me like a good opportunity, because that pullback had just happened and it was fairly abrupt. And often when they happen quickly, the retracement can happen quickly as well. And, obviously I knew the Bitcoin halving was coming up. So yeah, that was a trade I made. Jen says, example, if the Middle East tension increases, inflation will rise and interest likewise. Fed cuts delayed, making stock markets fall, dragging all financial markets with them. Um, I'm not worried about that. I'm not. Again, we did see with the last Bitcoin halving, and I even like sent an email to the Seeds community about this at the time, that which maybe some of y'all had seen. But it was interesting to me because the stock market collapsed on, I believe, March 9th of 2020 in the US, because like lockdowns were forthcoming. I think they hadn't maybe quite started yet. I don't know. It was right around that time. And people didn't know what like then President Trump was going to do. So the stock market collapsed, but crypto didn't. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. But then the next day, crypto did. And then it was like, oh, okay, this is kind of a new thing, because I would say in previous cycles, there was much less of a correlation between what the stock market was doing and what cryptocurrency was doing. Excuse me. That's going to be changing, and it has changed with the introduction of things like Bitcoin ETFs, because the relationship is more tightly wound. Um, so yeah, there was that, but I'm not worried about this particularly. Um, if anything would have really, if any sort of geopolitical macro issues could have really adversely affected things, I would have said that COVID would be it, because it impacted us globally in a way that nothing else has since, I guess, the Spanish flu in 1918. It was affecting everybody at the same time. And I don't see, for what it's worth, another event like that. So yeah, no, Jen, so that's not something I'm worried about, especially at a juncture like this where we have so many other factors at play that so many people believe are going to drive things up, because it's happened in the past. Yeah. And again, if I learned something that changed that opinion, I would change that opinion and make adjustments. But I don't see a sign of something to that scale that would have a grand impact, based on what I know right now. Cody says, what's the alternative term for crypto not associated with Bitcoin? There's so many, I didn't know altcoins was a derogatory term. I mean, I've never heard anybody else complain about that necessarily besides myself. Um, I would just call them whatever they are. I mean, like whatever their name is, whatever the name of the project is, or just refer to it as crypto generally. Also, there's this thing kind of now where there are what are called Bitcoin maxis, Bitcoin maximalists. They'll use the term altcoin, And their position is typically that like Bitcoin is the only thing, everything else is a scam kind of deal. And this does not mean that they don't exist, but I have never encountered a Bitcoin maxi at this stage or even 5 years ago who was like who was approaching things thoughtfully and open to conversation and debate. So, like, those people are the ones that are using that term. And I feel like, you know, it's sort of a smaller subset of the larger cryptocurrency world. And you can make cases certainly that Bitcoin is more decentralized because it requires mining, proof of work systems. There are other conversations you can have about that, but I've never met a Bitcoin maxi that I thought was super smart, was thinking about things in a super smart way, frankly. And that's the group that kind of generated this term altcoin, I'd say, or it's an older term, but that's the group I guess I'd say that is continuing to use that term now. Yeah, so I would just say cryptocurrency generally, or like referring to this specific project. Um, yeah, Tin Top says long-term mindset is a great strategy. Yeah, I agree. Seems they always want you to look at the short-term movements of the market in order to prompt you to make emotional moves. Zoom out on the charts and look at the big picture. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, although I wouldn't say Cody says agreed, got to trade emotionless. I wouldn't say that because it's not possible because we're humans, right? I mean, unless you're like a Buddha and you're enlightened, you're still going to be impacted by the vicissitudes of life. So I really advocate for thinking about things in terms of both like the masculine and the feminine, left and right brain. So you're coming in with a rational standpoint. You're looking at the data, whatever. You're looking at the history again to see what's happened in the past. Um, but at the same time, emotions can protect you. One of the things that was really important, probably the most important thing to learn, like when I started out as a pro trader, I realized, a pro stock trader, I realized that like, oh, so much of this is about managing your panic because when something is really strongly going against you, it's terrifying. and but the thing about that is, and it's very easy to say this and much harder to do, you really need to, it's like a muscle. You need the experience to build this muscle, which is why in our course we focus on live trading to get people to practice because you have to go through this really a bunch of times to understand it. But like in those moments when things are really going against you or they've dropped, kind of like now where things have pulled back fairly significantly, those moments of greater uncertainty are often the best opportunities to get in. And newer traders have a lot of trouble with that usually. So there's that. But then also, if you're already in a position, like say I was trading Bitcoin and I bought a bunch at 73,000 just below the all-time highs. If you're in that position, it's going to be really painful for you if it drops back down to 60 grand like it did. So managing your panic is super important. But having that emotion can key you into um, being more cautious or being more thoughtful about trades in a way that isn't necessarily going to be there for you if you're just trying to be a robot. It's really both things. And intuition is super important. Like maybe you're looking at a cryptocurrency project and like on paper it looks really interesting and you know that there are fancy people who are advocating for this cryptocurrency or whatever, but something about it just feels a little off to you. Like for example, Helium is a project that was kind of getting hyped a lot 2021-ish. Andreessen Horowitz invested in them. And I mean, it looked like it made sense. You were, I think, mining on your phone using Wi-Fi. I didn't look at the project very closely. And it's since been revealed that they have a lot of problems and whatever. So that it was just like, it kind of looked fancy and maybe like it was a good idea, but something about it felt not quite right to me. And so I didn't get involved in it. And I also tried to share that opinion with others who are considering getting involved in it so that they like had that additional information to consider while they were making their decisions. So there can be instances like that. Maybe you can't even point to a specific reason that it doesn't quite feel right, but you got to pay attention to that because the rational brain can only do so much. There's so much more information we're getting subconsciously and outside of the narrow framework of rationalization. Yeah. Cody says maybe neutral is the word I mean to use. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to panic trade for sure. Panic trading isn't going to help you out. Jen says, would you prefer ether or soul at current levels? Definitely ether. I talked a a little bit about Solana earlier. That's kind of another example of this, really. Solana was another project that looked like it could be attractive, especially in the very early days if you could get it super cheap. And it, there were definitely people who bought it when it was cheap and it went up a bunch, but it just didn't, I wasn't into it. It didn't feel quite right to me. And they've since had a variety of technical issues that I think, I mean, again, like they were supposed to be one of the Ethereum killers, one of these projects that came in that was trying to um, address the problem that Ethereum addresses, but to do so in a better way. And like it's cheaper to use it. Projects have been built on top of Solana. But for me, I think that Ether is still the better project. That isn't to say that, like I touched on, cheaper cryptocurrencies have outperformed more expensive cryptocurrencies in previous cycles. We might see that with Solana versus Ethereum this time because Solana is cheaper. I don't know what the price is right now, but yeah, like that could make for a change. That could mean that it is more profitable to put $1,000 into Solana versus $1,000 into Ether. So yeah, you can take a look at that. It'd be interesting to look at the data last cycle. I don't know that I can pull it up really quickly to see like what $1,000 in Solana versus $1,000 in Ether would have gotten you a couple years ago up to now. But for me, Ether is more, I think it's better quality, it's more compelling. There are greater network effects because more projects are in that ecosystem. So yeah, I've never been interested in trading Solana. But if you want to trade it, do what feels right for you. Um, Stefan says, why do you think they made us grow up in ego feelings so that you can fuck up your own life? Um, that's a larger philosophical conversation. I mean, I do a lot of Vipassana meditation, which is supposed to be like the practice the Buddha used to get out of this. And it's helped me a ton. And it's made me see my own sankhara, is the word that they use. It's like sankhara is like trauma that we've internalized that we're still carrying around in the mind body structure. And through the Vipassana, you start to release more of it. So I kind of think it's like that. It's like we're coming in. I mean, I believe in past lives and stuff. I've had many past life regressions. I think we're coming in with stuff that we brought from past lives and we have to release the trauma of it. And until we do that, it can lead us to create more trauma for ourselves and for others. Um, since you brought that up, Cody says, I see so many crypto bros get flustered and on tilt when the price their invested coin dumps, but then lose their shit when the God candle pops off. Such emotional swings are crazy to watch. Yeah, it is funny. But the thing too, Cody, is like, um, crypto bro is such a broad term now, I guess, too. I mean, I know I use it to identify the type of energy that I'm not into that I think is problematic in the space. But a lot of those people who could be called crypto bros, they're newer traders. I mean, you'll see people like on Reddit or something talk about how they've been in crypto since 2017, and that seems like a long time ago now. I've talked about how I started buying Bitcoin in 2013. That wasn't really that early. That doesn't that sounds early now, but it wasn't super early. And I remember then, like when I was buying Bitcoin in 2013, there was this cafe I used to go to in Brooklyn where I was living, and I would sit there and I would make trades. And I remember looking around and thinking, like, I wish there was a single person here that I could talk to about this because I'm so excited about it. And there weren't. It was still too early. So I think that it's a lot of those folks that are super emotional. They're just not experienced traders and they're newer to trading. And so that's what a lot of that is. And I was going to say that, like, I really noticed, especially in that 2013 cycle, that because I had experience as like a pro stock trader, I was really aware that I was coming in with some knowledge about how markets worked. There was a huge advantage because so many of the people getting involved like weren't traders, hadn't been traders. And things really moved differently at that time. Like now it kind of moves in a more predictable way because traditional finance has come into the sector more so. But back in 2013, it was more like the Wild West or whatever, like people say. And I just remember feeling like, wow, I have such a huge advantage because I do have this knowledge and this, like I don't panic trade and whatever. And that's still true today. It still definitely helps you out. But yeah, a lot of crypto bros I think are just inexperienced traders. And that's what happens with that. Tintap says Solana lost the Visa contract they were negotiating the last time the chain shut down. No payment processors can be shut off unexpectedly for hours every couple of months. I didn't know about the Visa contract. That makes me even less inclined to want to be involved with them if they're trying to get like contracts with Visa. But I'm also too, like, don't listen to me if it doesn't necessarily mean that that's a bad thing or something to want to work with the traditional system. Um, but yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's like valuable information. It just makes me think about how like I always want to encourage folks to like, you trade from what your values are. You make trading decisions based on your values. And it's important to articulate what those are going into trades. And for me, it's like I don't want to deal with the old system. Like I still have to deal with it to an extent. We're literally looking at a centralized exchange that is very similar to what I used when I was a pro trader. Like they haven't really innovated on this model here. But to the extent that I can, I just want to let the old system collapse and focus my energy on building things like seeds to bring in this new kinder system. So sorry, there's a bug. I never want to, I'm just really not into supporting stuff that's like into bridging into the old system or propping up the old system. That's why I didn't like XRP. Um, yeah. And it comes back, I've used this before, but like there's this Buckminster Fuller quote, this American futurist who lived in the 20th century. And he talked about this idea that like you can't change something by fighting the old system. To change something, build a new system that renders the old system obsolete. And I'm really into that idea. And that's what Seeds is about. And like, when it's bridging gaps to the old system to try and work with the old system, I'm always just like, no, like just let it do its thing. I'm working on not being mad about it and upset about it because that's also a form of perpetuating it if you're devoting that much strong emotion toward it, And yeah, so that's where I come from and that informs my trades, just to share that. Um Toby's here. What's up, Toby? Hi. Hey, I'm here. Total newbie. Just noticed during COVID, governments aren't afraid to basically do QE to save their own skin. Seems like a total unstable fiat system right now, looking at Bitcoin, et cetera. Yeah, right. I mean, that's to share this for anyone who may not know. When Bitcoin was generated, when the Gemini block was mined in I think it was January 12th of 2009, something that's kind of a fun fact or whatever is that in the I think it was in the Coinbase, there's like literally a copy of a headline from The Guardian about the second government bailout of the banks in 2008, 2009. So it's just like it's like an Easter egg or something because it shows this idea that whoever founded Bitcoin, that person or group of people still remains anonymous. They are they were really interested in getting us away from that old system. And so yeah, we're still seeing versions of that today, I think. Is my connection still good? I hope so. Can y'all still see me? I hope you can, because now it's quiet. It looked like it froze for a second on my side, so hopefully everything's cool. But it is almost noon my time. So let's see here. I did want to show, let's see, is there anything else here? So yeah, the halving dates we looked at. Nothing else here really, except just to let y'all know if you're not familiar that we do have other resources. So like if you're trading news events, our Discord has a news channel. I'm not like trying to promote our Discord. It just like ended up that this news aggregator that we created in the Discord news channel actually does seem to pull cryptocurrency news more effectively than any other tool I found online. It just has various RSS feeds from like Cointelegraph, and there's like a Google alert for the word cryptocurrency. And then we also pull from one specific subreddit that I think is still of good quality. A lot of what's on Reddit is garbage, I think. So that's available if you want a news aggregator. You can use that. I use that. And then our course is coming up. It's closing. This is weird because my face is so big here. It closes on Saturday, and the course supports us so that 100% of the value of gifts that come through the Seeds ecosystem can go to folks in need. And yeah, so we really appreciate it when people join. You can read more about the specifics. I teach the course, so I'm bringing in my experience as a former pro stock trader who started buying Bitcoin in 2013 and who founded a cryptocurrency ecosystem myself with Seeds. And the course is effectively free when you sign up because you get Seeds cryptocurrency and thanks when you pay in full upfront. Yeah, we only offer this not very often, and I've tried to time it. Like this is very intentionally closing on the day. Initially, it looked like the Bitcoin halving was going to be on April 20th, so that's why we chose April 20th as the day the course would close. So yeah, it's very intentionally timed at this time so that newer traders can come in and hopefully you're getting an advantage and getting involved right around when the halving happens based on the historical data we've seen. So yeah, again, it's effectively free because you get Seeds cryptocurrency and thanks when you sign up and pay up front. If funds are tight, there are payment plans. You can also redeem a seed to ask for help. We've had multiple people do that in the past. We really just want to get this information out to nice, giving people so that you benefit this time and have more resourcing to do what you're already doing, which is making the world a better place. So if that resonates, check the course out. And I think that's all I got. Let's see. See if there's any last stuff in the chat. Ooh. Okay, it looks like that's it. All right, y'all. I'll let you go. Thank you so much for your time and attention. And whatever you do, I mean, we'd love it if you help someone in need through Seeds and you got Seeds cryptocurrency and thanks. Be great if you join the course. But whatever you're doing, I really want to encourage you to use this moment in time to get involved in cryptocurrency in some way that resonates with you because like history just shows us that this is likely to be a really opportune time to get involved. And to me, it looks unprecedented because Bitcoin is already breaking all-time highs. That's never happened before in a cycle. So it's a big deal. So yeah, I hope that you'll get in there because I think it could be really beneficial. Okay, I'll let you go. Thanks so much. Have a good day. Bye.